What's up guys, it's King here, back with another video. Today I'm going to be bringing you guys a Destiny 2 Prismatic Titan build. Forgive me if this video doesn't seem super professional. I have not recorded in a really long time, and I'm kind of rusty with this. But essentially, I thought this is one of my first like builds that I've made on my own without like copying off of somebody on YouTube, and I thought it was potent enough and inspired enough to share on YouTube, so here we go. The main aspect about this build is that I really love the idea of like a up close and personal like weapon master type tie-in that like doesn't really like use guns for real. Like he's just like in the fray type shit, standard like tie-in like roleplay type shit. And I honestly think this is probably the best and the as close as possible to the most optimal glaive build you can run in like higher end slash end game content. I don't think the build is severely strong. Like I'm not going to sit here and lie and be like this build is broken or any type of shit like that. It's a really fun build and it's strong. I used it to solo the legendary campaign for the final shape, but I'm not gonna lie, it definitely has its strengths and weaknesses that I'll go over later. Just a quick recap of what you're gonna get into for this build. It's mainly a ad clear, typical ad clear glaive build mixed with a team support face tank playstyle. Um, if you're familiar with any of these weapons that I have equipped right now, you're gonna be really up and close and personal, drawing aggro while also being able to survive and kill people while just being up close, which is I love being able to do that. We're going prismatic for this build as opposed to void, which is what people have used in the past for most like tie and glaive builds. I know solar was used a bit. Personally, I thought the void overshields and devour helped with survivability way more than what solar could provide. And prismatic kind of takes it to the next step. The biggest reason we go with prismatic over void is the introduction of the exotic class items. Some of my aspects and mods are chosen here that you'll see in this video, assuming that I get the exotic class item like next week. So some of these won't make too much sense, like the facet of defiance that I'll go over later. But basically this build gets even stronger with the exotic class items, specifically the one that combines syntheseps and severance and closure into one exotic perk. Let's just get into the aspects, fragments, and why I chose what I chose. In terms of the aspects, we're going with knockout and consecration. Consecration is literally, I would not replace this with any of the other ones. It's just really strong, and being able to do it 3 times off of frenzy blade is truly like you can't really replace what this can do. This combo can do frenzy blade plus consecration. Knockout makes this even better because you will heal off of the consecration slams, and knockout will give it a damage boost and make you amplified, which ties into the galvanic armor artifact mod, giving you even more damage reduction to help you survive up close. We go with this, even though it's really tragic that we're not running Drangers. Like, I've been on the fence of switching between knockout and Drangers, mainly because Dranger gives you another fragment slot, and also with this build you're using thruster, and with the fragment setup you're using thruster a lot, so you'll be able to have a pretty decent uptime with using Dranger's Lash, considering it works with thruster. It leaves a knot that explodes into a suspending burst when you use thruster. But we're going with knockout anyways because for 2 reasons. One, it makes this better, consecration plus frenzy blade, but also there are gonna be encounters, especially in endgame, where you kind of have to shift away from the up close glaive playstyle, unfortunately. And when you're spamming the frenzy consecration as much as possible, knockout is just infinitely better than Tranger Slash. We're going with Shackle Grenade here as opposed to the other grenade options. You could theoretically run something like Pulse or Thermite or Glacier, but the CC aspect, like I said, you're gonna be up close. You're going like want to survive over everything else, and Shackle Grenade just helps with that a lot. It helps. It could be an oh no button. It could be a gap closer. It's just really good. It just helps the build a lot. In terms of the fragments, most of these are, I want to say, like mandatory. Faceted protection is really handy with giving you more, even more DR to survive up close. The source of DR you have with this build is a lot. You'll have the DR from protection. You have the DR from 100 resilience. You'll have the DR from being amplified with the artifact mod, and with the Vexcalibur overshield, you have even more DR with the constant void overshields. Facet of Hope is what allows you to spam your thruster. Like I said, with the Vexcalibur, you're going to have an elemental buff, specifically void overshield, basically as long as there's enemies around to keep your glaive gauge up. It's like a very, Vexcalibur is the king of void overshield uptime in my opinion. So you're gonna always have this class ability regeneration increase, which will allow you to spam thruster as much as possible. Thruster is your gap closer as well, your mobility option, and thruster is super important to this build. So I think Hope is also mandatory. Facet of Blessing helps a lot with survival. With the certain mods we're taking, and the fact that this build can't get Devour, sometimes you'll take a lot of damage and it'll bleed through your overshield, and you'll get a melee off and with Vexcalibur, and it'll replenish your shield, but it won't replenish the health below it like Devour would when you use this build with the Void Titan. So that's why I've leaned towards this fragment. It again helps with the survivability. When you're playing a face tank up close playstyle, number one priority is being able to live. Like there's no point in being up close if you're not going to survive doing it. So when you're trying to play a build like this in endgame content, you really have to go as much as humanly possible into survivability for it to be like for you not to throw, essentially. The next fragment, Facet of Defiance, is truly like right now the state that the build is in, you can replace this with literally anything. I was using Facet of Balance before to help with getting more melees, but once you get the exotic class item that combines Synthos with Severance and Closure, this fragment will really start putting in the work, because essentially it replaces the Echo of Cessation, which is what Void Titans or Void Guardians use. And if you're familiar with Severance and Closure at all, you would have a gameplay loop of using a finisher. Cessation would make everyone volatile around you, and then the explosion from Severance would blow up that volatile. Controlled Demolition would make that blow up even more. You obviously can't get that on Prismatic, but basically that's what this does. But you only get the volatile if you have your Void super equipped. So unfortunately, even though I probably would rather run Blade Fury with this build, Twilight Arsenal is the optimal choice in my opinion, mainly for this. So if you wanted to like change this build up, these would be the first things you could do. You could switch this fragment out, Defiance, with literally anything else, and which would give you more freedom of what you want here, because the next one also will depend on what super you have, the Facet of Purpose. This kind of replaces your leg armor mod for something like Recuperation or better already. It frees up that space for you to be able to run other stuff, because this is basically if you're running like Void or Solar or this what helps you get survivability on orb pickup. It replaces those mods for that. You could also run those mods to make it even better, but with Facet of Purpose, I feel like it's kind of a bit unnecessary. And with the Void, super specifically, getting the Overshield on orb pickup, it's kind of great, but it's also kind of not great at the same time. Vexcalibur has a base 8-second Void Overshield when you use it. So whenever you melee or extend it with your guard, it'll go back up to the 8 duration. But when you pick up an orb and get the Overshield, it'll give you 5 seconds of Void Overshield. And when you extend that Overshield with Vexcalibur, it can only cap at 5. So there are some circumstances where you want to have your Overshield up with Vexcalibur first before picking up the orb, or else you'll be locked into that 5-second Void Overshield until it runs out and you can put another one up. It's not a super big deal, but it can play into account sometimes. So I would just watch out for that. I'm pretty sure that's it with fragments and supers and whatnot. So let's go to the armor mods. The armor mods, for the most part, some of them are kind of self-explanatory. You go Dynamo because you're going to be thrustering near people fairly often to either close gaps or just move while you're up close. So Dynamo helps you get your super back faster. All of these are just, before I continue with the other mods, your stat mods, get to 100 discipline. Try to get to 100 resilience, not discipline. You want high recovery, discipline, whatever. Intellect is whatever. Mobility is whatever. Strength, it would be nice to have a lot because this build kind of struggles with ability regen. But as long as your resilience is at 100, you're kind of good to go. Like, this build doesn't rely on your abilities for the most part. So if your other stats aren't crazy high, it's whatever. And you get a lot of survivability even without the natural recovery you get from this stat. So it's also not that big of a deal. Mainly just 100 resilience. You got the Void Siphon. Your Vexcalibur is Void. Another reason why you would want to make sure you have Void Siphon is there's occasional encounters where you really don't want to be running your Vexcalibur. You can easily switch to a Void weapon like Graviton Lance, which I would highly recommend. You'll be able to still get orbs because they're both Void, and you'll have a range option for those certain encounters where you just really can't go up close and do glaive shit. You got Void Loader mainly for Vexcalibur when you can't proc the auto reload. It feels really bad when you have to reload the glaive and you can't put your shield up and then you get cooked. The heavy-handed, mainly just 1 is mandatory to get the orbs from consecration, obviously. But 2 gives you a lower cooldown on it, so if you're getting like a lot of multi-kills with the consecration, you'll be able to get more orbs. Melee resistance, you definitely want this. You definitely want resistance while you're up close because that's where you're gonna be at. Loosened blades, I'd say both of them are mandatory. I haven't fully explored testing 1 versus 2 versus 0. You definitely want at least 1 for the most part. This basically allows you to get more energy when you shoot people with your glaive, and having your shield energy with your glaive is imperative with this build. Literally, if you don't have any ammo and you run out of shield gauge, like, you're kind of just cooked. So you really want to have as much shield as possible. Invigoration to help you get more melee energy. Like I said, the consecration slams are really good with ad clearing and stuff like that, so you want to have your melee up as much as possible. But then again, this build kind of struggles with having high ability uptime compared to other builds. Void Scavenger, again, Vexcalibur, you do not want to run out of ammo with Vexcalibur. It is imperative that you do not run out of ammo with it. Stacks on stacks plus special finisher helps you keep up with it. You got proximity ward for those finishers so you don't die doing it. And then Reaper plus the melee kills, mainly Reaper, is going to be your main way on how you get those orbs so you can get enough charges to do your special finisher to keep your ammo up. So that's that with the armor mods. Most of them, like I said, aren't really wiggle room. I wouldn't change anything on here. You're going to want to fish for finishers a lot, especially when you get the Severance Enclosure addition to the exotic class armor. And you really want to have your armor charge. Potentially you could switch stacks on stacks, but this helps consistently having you at max charges to get these as much as possible. It really sucks not having the charges when you need them. So I wouldn't really change most part of this. The arms probably has the most flexibility here, plus the helmet with changing stuff around, but everything down here I wouldn't really touch. Next with the weapons, again, Vexcalibur is the bread and butter of this build. It's what this build is centered around. For the Vexcalibur roll, you really block feedback refit is the best in slot for higher end content. The one that basically gives you Grave Robber is nice in low end content where you know you don't really have to block too often. You can just go to town with Syntho Glaive and have fun and shit. But in high end content, feedback refit is mandatory. It is best in slot. It helps you face tank consistently because a lot of the times you're going to be shielding in front of enemies and you're not going to be killing people. You're literally going to be holding block in front of champions and shit like that. And being able to shoot and reload while blocking is imperative. If you don't know what Vexcalibur does, while you're blocking, you get gradually you and anyone around you gets forward overshield. Obviously it helps your allies as well, but it mainly just, even if this only gave it to you, it would still do what it needs to do. Getting that gradual overshield is the main reason why you would run this over literally any other glaive. And not to mention Perpetual Loof kind of acts like a what's it called, close to melee or whatever that one glaive perk is that gives you bonus melee damage. You get the bonus melee damage with the void overshield. So this is the bread and butter. This is what the build is mainly built around. The other two weapons I have here are just typical kind of DPS weapons. Scatter Signal, Enhanced Overflow, Control Burst, really good for secondary boss DPS. You got your classic Reconstruction, Bait and Switch. If you have a god like Edge Transit, you could run that. I go Apex over this because glaive melees do not proc Envious Assassin, unfortunately. Only the glaive shots will give you overflow mags, and you don't really want to spam your Vexcalibur ammo to get the Envious procs because the ammo for Vexcalibur is super crucial. You do not want to be wasting shots like killing ads with your glaive shots. You really want to save that to keep your shield gauge up, and you do not want to run out of ammo. So Scatter Signal plus Apex is a good supplementary for boss DPS. Or you could just have a completely different loadout for like boss encounters. Up to you. But like if you wanted to keep like a consistent, like me personally, I don't really like switching builds too often, especially like mid encounter and stuff like that. So if you wanted to keep like a kind of all around build, you got your ad clear survivability stuff, and then you got your boss DPS things. Artifact mods, only one that's important is Galvanic Armor. It gives you the DR while you're amplified. Your amplified uptime isn't as high as I would like it to be, because your melee uptime isn't as high as I would like it to be. I'll be experimenting more with that in the future, hopefully finding ways other than the invigoration to keep my melee uptime higher. But as of right now, this is kind of the best we can do with that. So Galvanic Armor is really important. everything else kind of up to you. Here's a quick look at my appearance, my drip, just in case anyone saw and really liked it. It's gonna change obviously a little bit when I get the exotic class armor, but mainly going for that like knight gladiator type persona and whatnot. I really like how it looks. I would like to do a quick recap now of this build's strengths and weaknesses. In terms of strengths, your survivability up close is extremely good with the guard from Excalibur, the DR from Galvanic Armor, and the DR from the Facet of Protection. You can really be up close even in endgame content. Like I said, I soloed the legendary campaign with this build, and you can really just be up on people and still survive, as long as you know what you're doing with your ammo and keeping your guard, your glaive gauge up. And again, this build can be very beneficial in a team scenario. You can really just, like last season, when I was playing a previous iteration of this build, you could literally just go up to a champion and hold block in front of his face, and he's just doing goofy shit to try to kill you, and you're just face tanking it because of the gradual void overshield and stuff, and you're using your bullets, and you keep getting more back because they're trying to hit your shield, but you keep getting ammo, you keep getting more guard, you keep getting more void overshield, and that gives your teammates enough time to position and shoot the champion down or mini boss or whatever it is they're trying to kill. And when that boss gets low enough, you just finish him, and then you get the explosions with Severance and Closure, most likely, if you were running that. Or if not, the guy is still dead. He just wasted his time trying to fight you, and you just blocked in front of his face for the whole thing. Now, I know that playstyle might not be the funnest for everyone, but you don't have to do that all the time. Like, this build isn't just 100% face tank blocking the whole time. You can still go crazy with Syntho Glaive shenanigans and whatnot. Just prioritize staying alive over anything else. I guess the last like big strength is this build in anything under like legendary campaign difficulty. This build is literally invincible. Like, you would have to literally not understand how this build works at all to die. With your void overshield up, you can literally run at an enemy and kill them in one hit with one glaive hit, instantly put your void overshield back up, and like they literally can't damage your void overshield enough for it. Like, they can't get close to killing you before you just kill somebody else and get your void overshield back up to max. So like anything in like late mid to lower content than that, you're literally invincible. Like, you have to go out of your way to die with this build for sure. But that being said, the weaknesses of this build is very apparent, and it can get in the way a lot. The weaknesses do suck, the ones that it has. With the specific loadout, you have literally no range, which is why thruster and shackle grenades are really important to help you close those distances. Sometimes you even just have to hold block and slowly walk up sometimes. Like, you really don't have a lot of range. The glaive shot doesn't have crazy range either. And you don't really want to waste your like rocket launcher ammo on some random dude across the map that's shooting at you. So having no range can feel very, very crappy at times. But being able to have good map knowledge and good understanding of how the build loop works can help you get around that. Another weakness this build has is the ability uptime. This isn't an ability focused build, but the uptime you're gonna have with your melee and shackle, especially when you expend all of your frenzy blades, is kind of tragic. Which is why you really want to save your abilities for when you actually need them for real. You do not have a lot of ability regen. A lot of the times, especially with your grenade cooldown, you literally will just have to wait for it to come off cooldown. There's not, like, you could replace this with bomber, but then your melee will get less uptime, But you really with when you lost Devour switching from Void to Prismatic, you really lost grenade uptime, because the previous iteration of this build ran Devour and offensive bulwark, so you could like literally spam grenades like crazy. But this build has neither, so your ability uptime is very low. So use them when you need them, and only when you need them. Another weakness this build has is specific to Prismatic, is it struggles keeping your dark energy up with your light energy to reach Transcendence. You get light energy like crazy with your void shots. Literally, like your glaive shots fills up like 20% of the light bar per shot. Like it gives you a lot of light energy, but you don't really have a lot of way to get a lot of dark energy. Other than doing literally like other than throwing your shackle grenade and getting melee hits. When you melee people with Excalibur, it counts as kinetic damage, so you will get both light and dark energy when you do it, but not a whole lot. So your dark energy really struggles to keep up, so your Transcendence uptime is also a bit low comparatively to other builds. Another weakness is your ammo management. And I say this, I put this in a weakness because it can be very challenging for people to balance double special in this metagame. Especially when you're using the special ammo in the way that we are doing it. Which is why we have these mods here to help as much as possible with keeping our ammo up at all times. But I've had situations where I've had very grindy encounters where I'm not really getting a lot of opportunities to get orbs and special ammo finishers off, and I start getting really low on Excalibur ammo. You really want to prioritize keeping this as ammo up as much as possible. This is 70% of your survivability. You really want ammo up on this as much as possible. Another pseudo weakness for this build is, especially in endgame content, you really rely on your teammates for consistent boss / mini boss like damage. You only have Scatter Signal and Apex Predator and your super for damage, which can be enough in certain scenarios, but especially long encounters, you will run out of ammo fairly quickly. You don't have any reserves, so you're only locked with that 7 ammo and the 18 you get from Scatter Signal. So you can, like, the total DPS with all of the rockets and Scatter Signals with bait and switch, like, you're doing damage, but if you're doing multiple encounters, like, it's very easy to run out of ammo for these two weapons and be kind of a sitting duck in terms of helping your team kill a boss. So for encounters like that, you kind of are relying on your teammates to have good boss DPS. Worst case scenario, you can again switch your weapon loadouts to be a bit more, or you could replace some mods especially to be a bit better with boss DPS. But in terms of your general all-purpose, this is the loadout you want to go, but you will kind of struggle with extended boss encounters. That is the build for the most part. It's really fun. It's really enjoyable in my opinion. I really like the Weapon Master Fantasy. For some closing remarks, just a final recap, just in case there's some misconceptions, misunderstandings. You are the anchor. You are the front line whenever you're playing this build. Your job is to be in the front line. Your job is to draw aggro. Your job is to face tank marked targets. You want to face tank the big major. You want to face tank the champion. There are some enemies that even through your overshield and DR just do too much damage, and you don't want to be up close to them. And that's kind of just a game knowledge moment that you have to be aware of. But for the most part, that is what you want to do. You want to be up there and close. You want to smack people up. You want to face tank. That's it from me, guys. I really hope you guys enjoy the build. I'm going to be continuing to experiment and play test this build even more. to optimize this further, especially when the exotic class armors drop. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.